Hi, I'm Rick Whitted. I am the CEO at U.S. Hunger, and we've brought together some of our partners and collaborators talking on a conversation around the role that data and technology actually plays in the fight against hunger, food insecurity, and food insufficiency. So I've got a few friends with me who are really in the trenches of that fight. So I'll start here. Winston Chiu, he is the CEO of FeedForward, a community impact organization in the New York area. Winston has a degree in mathematics and finance, but has found his way in the world of food, comes from a legacy of food, was with the Institute of Culinary Education, as a chef, a co-founder of several food businesses. I call him a community warrior who has an entrepreneurial spirit. So glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Then we have Lory Nunez. Lory is the data science director of wealth management at JPMorgan Chase, and she's responsible for leading their AI initiatives in that department. She's also a published technical author, multiple patent holder, international speaker for data, Python, NLP, machine learning, stuff that I can't even spell. She's the 2021 Data Science Professional of the Year at the Water Technology Women in Data Technology. And I am not worthy to be on this stage with that kind of intelligence, but we're glad to have her here.
Don't sell yourself short, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Ezekiel Brooks. Ezekiel serves at U.S. Hunger with me. He is our Chief Technical Officer. I don't even know how we got him, but it's 3 decades of software architecture. He is brilliant at what he does, and really has a collaborator spirit and heart. So we're glad to have Ezekiel here as well. Thank you. So, this has been a fascinating set of conversations over the last couple of days, and we're talking about, it's dialogue on sustainability and transparency and equitable food future. And so when I think of that word equitable, that's kind of where our conversation is going to hang out for a bit. Equity defined as access for all. And really, when you think about food insecurity or nutritional insecurity or hunger, whichever word you want to use, it really is a conversation about accessibility or the lack thereof. Accessibility to housing, accessibility to transportation, et cetera. And there is this glass ceiling in this conversation, particularly in our country. It's about 10.5%. And we can't seem to get the number of food insecure families in America, one of the most wealthy countries in the world, below 10.5%. It's over 40 million families. And we don't know the census number yet, right, for what has happened in the pandemic, but estimates is it's clearly over 42 million in America. And so if we're going to have a conversation about the future state of food, a healthy chain, a healthy supply, accessibility for all, that has to be a hand-in-glove discussion with, well, why are there hungry people in the first place? Because if we don't, where we end is with an incredible food system and some people still not having access. And so really glad that Little Herds and Food Tank asked us to come and have this conversation. It just feels like a great fit. So I'm going to jump right in. Thank you. I'm going to jump right into you. It looks like you brought your fan base, Winston. Not addressing the current issues of our fight against food, right, will only lead to this issue perpetuating, no matter how great the system is, potentially. So you're on the ground. You and your team, Meg and Liz at FeedForward, you guys are on the ground. You're in the community. You're touching lives. You're feeding lives. What I'd love for you to talk about is how would you describe that current state of food accessibility in the communities you serve in and across the country?
Thanks, Rick. I think Andrew Zimmerman said best earlier, we currently live in a complex ecosystem of issues, and I believe food is just in the middle of it all. It's the substance that keeps us going every day. Through our work at FeedForward, we support a more than a meal impact program that bridges food accessibility by tackling sort of the core issues. Why are we in this place, as you mentioned? And I think, in order for us to answer that question, we need to know who we're serving first. And so we work through technology and collaboration to bridge connection. I think it's important for us to understand when we're talking about food insecurity or hunger or any of those issues, we're dealing with humans and individuals that have needs, very specific needs, and they're very unique needs that may differ. So through that, our work, we look at making a connection, and that connection is important because it allows us to, one, say, who are you, how can we serve, and how can we do better? So with our program, we have a simple SMS text that allows individuals that are to gain access to food through restaurants and marketplaces for free. And through that text communication, one thing that we realized is that we're actually creating a relationship, having a conversation that starts with, are you hungry? Do you need food? Giving them the access to that, for them to give us the feedback channel to say, I need more, I need help, I need medically tailored meals, I need food that makes sense to me because what we're currently getting doesn't make sense because we don't have utilities or we don't have the ability to cook our food or don't necessarily have the bandwidth because we're juggling a lot. So through our collaborative approach and through our communication tools, we're able to set up progressive surveying that allows us to work with U.S. Hunger in a way that feeds the big data machine and data scientists like Lory to give us the direction so that we're hitting sort of these milestones in an approach that is conducive for us to continue the conversation. And I think that transparency is very important for us to continue to do our work.
Yeah, it's interesting. You and I met through the Austin food system community and the food tank community, and we were introduced. And it was because we're both very focused, our organization and teams are very focused on data and technology specifically in this fight against hunger. And that's unique, actually, in the world of community impact organizations. So Ezekiel, I want to turn to you. So we've learned that when it comes to nonprofits, because of a plethora of things, the lack of resources, competitive nature of the grant-seeking process, that often what happens is there's no data collection, or at least data is not collected well, and there's no collaboration. So 30 years of tech experience, you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
What is your observation of the state of technology as it relates to nonprofits and community impact organizations?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for that question, Rick, because it sets up nicely what I want to share with you, and that is technology often precedes and predates some of the most historic breakthroughs in society. I'll give you an example. And I'm dating myself a little bit here, but when GPS first came out, there were these huge units. You'd like glue them on your windshield or, drag a generator behind your car trying to run the thing. And it could tell you where to go. What a novel concept. Well, now that's ingrained in our society. Every single one of us right now is admitting GPS information right now. And we know where everybody is on the face of the planet at any time. And that's how much technology, and specifically data, can change things. Now, one drawback for those early GPS units was that the quality of the data was not that good. So sometimes you'd be driving along and you're doing great and you cross the state line and the data disappears because they had no backing map data about that particular destination. And so in that same way, data is a GPS for the food insecurity community, for all of us, right? If we don't know where we've been, we're not going to know where we're going. Well, we can agree on that. But even more intensely than that is the fact that data serves as a roadmap to those that are most vulnerable in a way that is context appropriate.
Yes.
A hypothetical I'd like to share is about Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones is food insecure. She reaches out to U.S. Hunger, asks for help. She does freeform data, she gives us information, she types in her story, and we use all this wonderful technology, machine learning, AI, and now language processing, which my buddy Lory is going to talk about some of the approaches we take there. And we use that data to discover, hey, it's really not about food. She's got hypertension, she's stressed out, she has grandkids she's taking care of. That's the kind of stuff that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
So, but together, if all of us started capturing this data and feeding it into a data engine, of which we're working on one, and there would be others, the key is collaborative effort and collective wisdom. This problem is so huge in a nation of 350 million people. There's no way any one organization can solve all of this.
Yeah.
The US government, with all of its might, can't solve this problem. It's going to take us to really push solutions to food insecurity. So that's how I see data and technology affecting our approach going forward.
Thanks, Ezekiel. I'm hearing his GPS analogy, and all I keep thinking is recalculating. If you laughed at that, you're over 45. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just saying. I was right there with you. I'm right there with you. All right, so, we have a ton of data coming in. We have more than 100,000 families that have just found their way to us. We don't market, we don't advertise, begging for help, and they tell us their story. We have so much data, we had no clue what to do with it. And Ezekiel came in and began to streamline our collection process and securing that collection process and aggregating that data so we can begin analyzing it. And Lory, that's really where you and JPMorgan Chase and the Force for Good team have come in. You are helping us figure out what this information means and what to do with it. So you're a data scientist at a very large organization. You direct a huge team and effort there. Why food accessibility, and how do you see data playing a role in this fight against hunger?
Well, the pandemic has made me realize that some problems you cannot solve alone. There are community-based solutions that I, as a technologist in a big corporation, was really interested in helping out. So JPMorgan, through their Force for Good program, enables technologists like me to engage with the community. And how they do that is they partner with nonprofits to deliver sustainable technical solutions. And so going back to your question, the problem of food accessibility, I think of it like as a tip of the iceberg problem. I think you spoke about it very eloquently. It's the tip of the iceberg. The data system or the data tool that US Hunger is developing allows you to look under that iceberg. It enables you to see the patterns in the data. It enables you to see trends and how the data is related to one another. So it's not just that, why are you hungry? Because as you guys pointed out, hunger is a symptom. Yeah. There's so many underlying causes. So that's how I see data as being essential in the fight against hunger. And once you know that, once you're able to see the relationships, the patterns, you are able to act. And now, realistically, some of us act we act reactively. Okay, there's a problem, let's solve it right away. But having the data behind you enables you to think about strategic solutions. Yeah. They're more effective. So that's how I feel that data can really aid in the fight against hunger.
Yeah, I love this group. We've got an entrepreneurial community warrior, a tech veteran who really knows his way around architecture, and a data scientist to address underlying causes of hunger. That's incredible, and I really applaud you all for being so collaborative in that approach. So we're trying to answer this question, why are families hungry in the first place? So Winston, gonna come back to you. So when you think about the intense amount of work that your organization, our organization, and others already are doing in the community, and honestly, there's a lot of food being given in the community, but we can't seem to answer this question. Why can't we answer this question about, understanding what's causing and driving hunger?
I think Ezekiel said it best. We have a data gap. Garbage in is garbage out. And if you don't have the preface of what that data is indicating in the first place, you don't know how to get to your destination. So one thing that we focus on at More Than a Meal and FeedForward is how do we create a system that allows engagement at all levels, so that people are participating and submitting information that we can assess and work with the Lorys of the world to say, what's going on here? We have tens and thousands of data points, but we need to be able to sum it up in a way that we can have a collective strategy and build collaboration in the process to say, how do we reduce the redundancies? We're all trying to do one thing here, which is serve our community, feed them, but yet at the same time, there's a lot of things that challenges us in being able to actually hit some of these goals is because, there's high competition for these programs, but if we can work collectively and focus on our core competencies as the person that's, boots on the ground, as we often say, the data scientist, and you guys as, the big data manager, how can we focus in our own fields, but work collectively to make sure that we're getting to that place together and not leaving anyone behind. So, FSCs are programs that we've seen through collaboration with other community-based organizations have gone up. Feedback channel, if we delivered a meal, was it good? Yeah. What would you like to see that what we're not doing, whether it's in terms of service, using those technology to actually streamline the things that are difficult for us. When COVID hit, a lot of volunteer systems went down and a lot of soup kitchens had to close out because they didn't have that volunteer base that they need. But that's something that data and technology can kind of fulfill the void and move that along because we're streamlining reservation systems, making sure that we're approaching it with dignity so people are a little bit more open because there's stigma is now removed from having to sustain yourself. So with our approach, I think we can serve as an example for other organizations to be able to work together, understand what we're trying to do with the data, because there is that trust that needs to be restored with our community because we've promised them a lot, but over and over again we failed to deliver. So we have to be transparent. How are we going to use this data to make sure that we're adding value rather than just taking away from the community? So hopefully we can not only buy local, but we can also feed local.
Yeah. It's incredible. The moment you said we asked them, was it good? Was everything okay? I thought, yeah, Amazon does that, and that's what and so why aren't we doing that in the food assistance process? And technology can help us do that in a way that allows their voice to have a part in what's going on. So thank you, Winston. Ezekiel, I'm going to turn to you. So sure. Winston's integrating technology into the engagement on the ground in the community. We're doing the same thing virtually through our online platform. So how can technology help us build trusting relationships so that we can best assess and understand how to help those we want to help, those families and children in need?
Yeah, I'm going to sticky point that and come back to it. I think something important for us to say as a collaborative team is explain how all of this works very quickly. That is, there's a digital applicant intake process. Many of you have that, right? Somebody goes to a website or wherever the case may be. The data is gathered, it's pulled in a central repository. And so, for example, working with FeedForward, they are the front face of this fight in food insecurity, and they are exercising dignity and discretion and all those good things and building trust with the local community. Our job is to take the data, take the first look at it, and then farm it out to experts like our buddy Lory here, who can help us make sense out of what it's saying. And then our job is to turn it into actionable intelligence, whether it's geomapping or reports or whatever the case may be. But as far as technology really helping bridge the gap, technology and data, specifically data, gives voice to the voiceless. So this hypothetical I keep sharing with you guys about Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones may have visited with a social worker, but she did not divulge the full extent of what's going on with her because of dignity and discretion issues, which we value very highly at our organization. So what we try to do is to make sure that her story is heard, that is analyzed correctly, even though she didn't talk to a social worker, even though she may not have even shared with her doctor everything that's going on. She may not have even shared with social services everything that's going on because those grandkids are in the house. We know that kind of stuff. All of us are canaries in the coal mine, and we're getting just-in-time information about trends of what's going on. The technology can allow us to do that. But in order to really make that happen, we've got to gather good, clean data and really up our game in that particular respect.
Yeah, and we also don't share our data, so no individual data ever goes back. There's just a strong enough thumbprint with address, street address, zip code. There's a persona of what's really going on in the marketing. You can be discreet and you can be dignified in how you handle that data. And so appreciate that. And honestly, it wasn't until we took the time to ask, because sometimes we don't ask because we're uncomfortable.
That's right.
Right? And listen and then carefully document, what they're saying, that we realized it's not about food. It's not about food. And, if you'd asked our organization over the past decade, we would have said we provide 150 million meals, we ship them to 50 countries, and blah, blah, blah. I couldn't tell you a whopping stink about who they were or why they were hungry or what was going on. And until we had the bridge of technology to allow us to interface and allow them to have discretion, you didn't have to have a shameful exchange, that we began to understand kind of what was going on. So, Lory, you just heard two community-based organizations, stakeholders, right, for you, talking about some of their observation. What comes to mind when you think about a data-driven solution to meet some of the concerns they're addressing?
Well, one phrase comes to mind, like impact at scale. We can give one box to one family, but if you really want to make an impact at scale in some way, shape, or form, you have to have a data-driven strategy. There are some challenges to have a data-driven strategy. I'm not gonna lie, but it requires a subtle shift in mindset. It requires, as what you pointed out, curiosity, creativity, and collaboration. First, you have to be curious. Have an honest assessment of what data do you have? What data can you respectfully collect? Where are you in your process? Then be creative. How are you going to use that data? If that data is showing you inefficiencies, great. Address that inefficiency. And even one step above that, one step beyond that, how do you predict that inefficiency in the future so you can avoid it? What is the data telling you about your customer? What customer segments are you finding out? And one step above that, how can you personalize your service to address the different customer segments? Those are just ways on how you use your data and find creative solutions to it. And the third one is collaboration. As Ezekiel is pointing out, we are only as good as what the data we have. And it's not taking away, and I know you pointed out about this, Winston, that when you share your data, it's not taking away anything from you. You're creating something bigger than you. You're boosting each other's success. So always the collaborative nature of data sharing enables everybody. It's not taking away from anybody. You're contributing to the overall success. You're making the pie bigger.
Yeah, that's so well said. And we talk about data, and you're hearing that word a lot. I will tell you, a huge part of the information that they're talking about is a verbatim story. I'm a father. I lost my job. We literally hear those stories. I have a child who has Down syndrome. His appointments are expensive. I'm choosing between paying, appointments for his therapist or food. Those are the stories we're hearing. So the information and the data that Ezekiel and his team and Lory and their team are working on is machine learning and AI to really process what contextually is going on through language. I don't even know. Why did I go out on that limb? Because that's as much as I can tell you. But these smart folks are figuring out the patterns in those stories. And for the first time, it gives the families that we help a voice at the table. And just think about that for a second, because we're smart people, and so we know how to help them, right? They're hungry, so what are we going to do? Feed them. And that's what we've been doing. And that's great. Still can't pay the bill. Still don't have transportation to get to work. There's a new job opportunity, but I can't take it because that's a 50-minute bus ride with 6 transfers, and I got 2 kids to coordinate in the middle of that. And so if we don't address these things collaboratively, and if the organizations who do such great work never come together, one of the things we say often at US Hunger is we have all the answers. We just all need to come together and talk about it and share it and figure out how to work together on the solutions and making sure that the voice of those we help are part of the solutions. All right, that's my soapbox. Last question to all of you. It's the same question. So when you think about the community of listeners that are in this room and online, and there are many change agents that are listening, what do you want them to remember about the future of food or nutritional insecurity? Winston, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. I want to start with just sharing a quick story.
Sure.
When we first started More Than a Meal, powered by FeedForward about a year ago, we were able to divvy out vouchers and give it to work with community-based organizations that were redeemable at restaurants. And somebody asked me a question, Winston, how do you prevent someone that's going to cheat the system? And I simply thought about it and I answered, what's stopping them from cheating the system now? Is there any income verification when you come up to a pantry line to pick up a meal? So the fact that we dignified the process, we now have to put rules to make sure that nobody's taking advantage of the system. But also living in New York City, and I speak for New York City because that's where we're from, is that you could be making $80,000 a year and you realize that you're still food insecure or you're still in need. Our demographic ranges from helping seniors to college students that are, receiving grants or they're receiving scholarships but cannot afford the cost of living. And, there's people that are in middle, lower income that just want to make it to the next level, but, they have to make these trade-offs. So I think it's important for us to, in terms of doing this work, to keep in mind that we have to be human and allow personalization, because our current system right now, we work through a centralized system in terms of how we tackle some of these issues. So I hope that we remember that, allow creativity to flow and be personalized in the way we approach. And it's simple. It doesn't really require much beyond just saying, hi, how are you? How can I help you?
Yeah, I love that. I love how intentional you guys are about just really knowing who you're helping, like the who, like knowing who it is that you're helping. That's so great. So I'm going to go to you, Lory. Same question. I'm going to add a nuance on that for you. But, when you think about this community listening and online, what is it about the future state of food and nutritional insecurity that you want them to walk away with?
I'm no expert. I've only worked with you guys for 6 wonderful months, and it's been a great journey. But this is what I do know. The future state of anything, we cannot achieve our ideal future state if we do not know the current state. We cannot achieve our ideal future state if we don't learn from our past state and our current state. And guess how we can learn about our current state? It is through data. It is through an honest assessment of what we have accomplished. It is systematic, intentional, respectful data collection, and also collaboration with organizations, your peers, other NGOs, and with the private sector. We went to that event last night when there was a talk on private and public collaboration, private sector and public sector collaboration. There are many organizations like Force for Good and JPMorgan. I encourage you to reach out to them and see how organizations like Force for Good can help you accelerate your journey, your technical journey, how you can use technology in accelerating where you want to be. And last but not the least, I encourage everybody to think on how to make the data work for you. Make the data tell your story. Make the data tell the story of the people you're serving. Make the data tell the story of your organization. And that's how I believe we can accelerate this. We can accelerate solutions to fight hunger.
I think you articulated my nuanced second question well, so I'll spare you. But I really appreciate you coming alongside us. Our organization, FeedForward, the work that JPMorgan chases Force for Good at no cost to us, and the time that they're spending. We could not afford that as a community-based. There's no way, right? So take them up on the offer to go to their website and apply. It's real. They do help. And this is a great example of the community impact organizations and the corporate world working together. We also see that in this organization with Kroger and Little Herds. And I just think it's a great, and Food Tank, I think it's just a great great examples of what can happen. Ezekiel, I'm going to go to you last. Sure. And same question. Okay. When you think about this community of change agents and those who are listening online, what is it you want them to take away from this in light of what you're learning? You're seeing hundreds of thousands of personalized hunger stories every day, you and your team. What do you want them to take away?
Wow, that's a loaded and rich question. I'll be brief with it. But the first thing I want to say is going back to something Lory said about her telling you about Force for Good. Take advantage of that. It can accelerate your organization from 0 to 100 overnight. But data's got to be cleaned. So if you have questions or need some tips on how to get your organization moving in the right direction, we don't know everything, but what we do know, we're doing it pretty well. So feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn or wherever you find us if you have questions. We certainly are not in this for money. We're in this to make a difference, right? We want to make a difference in the lives of people as nonprofits. And so that leads to 3 things that I would say I would encourage us all to remember. Number 1, we are better together. Like a beautiful tapestry made of so many different pieces. Any one piece on its own doesn't look particularly beautiful, and it's not particularly effective. But when you weave it together, and that data is the thread that weaves us together going forward, it's going to make us better together. And it'll make one big, beautiful solution to make a much greater impact. The second thing is to remember that data is our GPS into the future of food insecurity. As everyone has already mentioned, that accuracy of the data is important, dignity of the data is important, not sharing personal information, that kind of stuff. But the summary level things are our GPS. So that if you want to know about a county, there might be 5 organizations there that if we're all networked together and communicating with one another, you can gain insights that you might learn the hard way and hundreds of thousands of dollars later. So data is our GPS. And the last one is a bit philosophical. I think you're all familiar with the expression living outside the box. I want to modify that a little bit for our community and suggest that we strive very hard to know what's in the box, but we are determined to not be in it. So we have to be groundbreaking in our communication, in our relationships with each other. And this is great. Everything that Food Tank is doing, Little Herd, South by Southwest. This is the launching platform for a rocket ship called Change in Food Insecurity.
All right. Love that. Well said. Felt like theme music needed to be behind that. That was really good. We better end on a good note. Hey, I want to ask you one more question, Ezekiel, before we end. When you first took this role, and I know it was risky coming from the private world, T-minus 30 on the pandemic. One of the things you said to me was, I want to be a technical evangelist for the community organizations. Once you saw the hot mess we were in, there are a lot of community-based organizations listening. What kind of, in their thinking, well, this is impossible. I got 5,000 spreadsheets just on that desk alone. Give them some encouragement and first starting place.
Sure, I'd be glad to jump in on that. The first place to start is to make sure whatever you've written down your observations on and your record keeping, make sure it's right, no matter what format it's in. After you do that, there are ways to pull that data or aggregate, we call data aggregation, put it in a big database that belongs to your organization. And there's tons of resources to help you with that. Again, going back to JPMorgan Chase and Force for Good and what Lory Fell put out there. And there are others. JPMC is not the only one, right? Kroger Foundation. There's a lot of people who are sponsoring this type of work. Reach out to those organizations. If you don't know where to start, like I said, drop me a line on LinkedIn or send me an email. Probably the next step is to get hold of some very knowledgeable data people that can help you tell the story of the community you serve. Remember the tapestry. We're not trying to solve the whole problem, just the one in front of us. And if we all just do our part, just by cleaning our data, making sure it's right, getting somebody to help us interpret it, generating outcomes and impact reports and that kind of thing for your donors and the people that sow into your organizations, it'll make a huge difference. People become much more generous when they can see that the money they're giving is making a difference. So that's what I would say.
Awesome, awesome. So my panelists are nervous because we're a little early, and I'm all off script now, but I'm going to use this time, and then we'll give them a few minutes back. Winston, I'm going to come to you. Same thing. There's a community impact world out there, and when we first met, you and Meg and Liz, you were down the same path we were down, and we got on a call. We shared each other's systems. And you immediately said, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we just work together? Why don't we figure out how to do that? And that seems to be, I'm very surprised. So I'm a 30-year corporate guy. I'm a recovering banker. I'm getting there, right? I thought we would come over to the nonprofit world and we would all hug and sing Kumbaya and flick our lighters, and it didn't happen. And yet when we met, immediately your heart was about, so how do we just do this together? You and your whole team, it was, how do we do this together? So what would you say to the community, the impact community, about the power of collaboration and or the fear of collaboration, right? It's real, right?
I think it goes back to the question, who are we serving? I think for us, we know that putting our ego aside allowed us to have, be here today to celebrate and share our work and our relationship. And I think we're going through a huge renaissance period. And if I had to kind of put my math hat on for a second, it's a 1 in a 100-year event, to be able to come to this point and create something of value. And after many years in both the private and in the public sector of understanding how do we build efficiencies. There's so much work to be done, and Ezekiel said best, not one company can do it, not one organization. It requires the collaboration and the buy-in of your stakeholders, those that are the donors that want to help, and those are recipients of the work that we do, and the people that work for our companies and are coming up every day to work hard. They're our stakeholders, and everybody has a piece, so we have to allow the level of participation for the visibility and also transparency for people to voice and say, what's on your mind? How do you think we can make this happen? And often it just comes down to communication. Yeah. And if we can break through those barriers and put aside the egos and communicate with each other, we'll realize that we're all doing different things, slightly different, but all doing the same thing, which is trying to make this a more equitable space.
Yeah. All right, so Lory, we're going to end with you. I promise this is the easy one. So you think about what you've done with our organization, and we have an Ezekiel, so that's made the lift a lot. It's allowed you guys to get in and go running, but a lot of what your organization, the Force for Good program, does is kind of getting in at the bottom level and starting wherever you need to start. If you had to say to an organization listening, I have no idea where even to start, is there one or two simple things you would suggest that anyone can comprehend as it relates to beginning to get my data house in order? Are there one or two things you would recommend?
Yeah. Ask the right questions first. I would start with the questions rather than the data. As an organization, what questions do you want to answer? As an organization, where do you want to be? Ask it first and be intentional about those. Just don't ask some random question, but what does that question affect? What processes will that question influence? Yeah. Ask those, the data will follow, the technology will follow, the data collection will follow. So that would be my suggestion. If you don't know where to start with a question.
Yeah, incredible way to end. Let's give our panelists a hand. Thank you for your time and attention. We appreciate it.